Are you ready to take control of your family legacy and financial future? Howard Kaye and his experienced team have been helping families and business owners coast to coast with their most important financial decisions for more than 60 years. They have the proven strategies you need to grow and protect your wealth and family legacy for generations to come. Whether you're focused on wealth creation strategies, planning for guaranteed lifetime income, selling an existing life insurance policy that's no longer needed or wanted, or simply leaving a financial legacy for future generations, Howard Kaye has the resources to guide you every step of the way. Howard and the team at Howard Kaye Insurance Agency LLC want you to live a rich life that's well planned and tailored to your dreams. Live Rich, Die Rich starts now.
Think you can handle the truth when it comes to your estate plan and retirement? There are 4 financial realities you just can't ignore. The sooner you prepare for these things, the better your retirement and legacy can be. Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm Amy Sharp. Joining me, Howard Kaye and Tony Scuderi with Howard Kaye Insurance Agency. And Howard and Tony, it is great to be with you. How are you guys today?
Great, Amy. Thank you so much for having us.
Appreciate it.
All right,
glad to be here.
We've got a great show for everyone today. And when I hear the phrase, "Can you handle the truth?" what do you guys think about? Movie? Any movie come to mind?
Absolutely. What was that, A Few Good Men?
A Few Good Men, Jack Nicholson, can you handle the truth?
Right.
I don't think you can. But in all seriousness, you say that there are 4 financial realities, or 4 truths, if you will, when it comes to really having that retirement that you envision, and ultimately the legacy as well that you leave behind for your loved ones.
Correct.
Let's go through those today. Take us through, let's start with the first one.
Well, the first one really is longevity. People who are looking forward to their retirement really learned from the past and through their family, their parents and so on, and people live to 65, 70, 75 years old. But I can't tell you how many people that I meet with tell me that they're going to live to be 100, 110, 120, and as crazy as it may sound, who am I to say they're wrong?
Right.
And if that is a reality, well, how are you going to plan for that reality during retirement? Because you have to make sure that your monies can really sustain you for that long lifetime.
Yeah.
Tony?
Absolutely. Our role as we see it is to help clients through decisions that they've not made yet. In many cases, they don't have professional guidance. In other cases, they do have other advisors, but we have different techniques and approaches that help them to navigate these new waters so that they get there successfully.
Okay, financial reality number 2. What do we have on this one?
Taxes.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody is faced with taxes, and whether it's from a political standpoint, from administration to administration of are your taxes going up, are they going down, you have no way of knowing over the next 30, 40, 50 years, depending upon how long your retirement is going to be. So therefore, the idea is to put you in a position where we can help minimize taxes or create enough of a retirement income that given whatever taxes are going to come your way, it's still sufficient for you to enjoy the lifestyle that you've lived your entire life, but now are seeking during those retirement years.
Yeah, a lot of people thinking maybe taxes might go away in retirement. That'd be
Correct.
a dream, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. And unfortunately, for most people, they're not thinking actively day to day that they have a partner, and the partner's Uncle Sam. And that's both during their lifetime when they're earning income, which affects their standard of living, but equally important, it happens to affect ultimately their legacy and what they leave behind, because estate taxes can be as high as 40% federally, and then in many states you have another 15, 16, 17%. So that can be very significant reduction on what you leave your family. If it's not properly planned for, you're going to leave your family in a real deficit situation.
And just one additional thing. Unfortunately, I lost my parents a couple years ago due to COVID. And my father was 91, 92, my mother was 87. And they had an aide because she had broken her pelvis, whatnot. Anyway, they had plenty of money. But that's not the story for everybody. But regardless of how much money they had, every day she would call and say, "Honey, can we afford to pay for this long-term care, which we don't have, but we do have aides?" And it was very expensive, especially in New York. You may be spending $600, $700, $800 a day. maybe $1,000 a day, and that adds up. Fortunately, they were able to afford it. But if you're not in that position, what do you do? And that's why long-term care insurance has become such a hot topic, a hot button, and it's so important because really, you will wipe away your entire estate if you don't have the means to afford it.
Up next, what's the one thing many people get wrong when it comes to retirement income? The answer is straight ahead. Stay tuned.
Everybody needs a plan. If Carol's ever going to retire, she needs a plan. So does Bob, if he ever wants to catch a break. Jim and Susan, they need a plan to keep the beat going. And Puddles over there? Yeah, he's going to need a plan too. You? Yeah, you probably need a plan. Whoever you are, whatever you do, you can use a plan for retirement. We can help.
Thanks for tuning in today as we discuss the financial realities you need to be prepared to face in retirement. I'm back with Howard and Tony, and we missed one. And before we get into our next topic here, there's a biggie, and it's a big topic right now, and that is inflation. How can we forget that
Inflation. Tony, why don't you talk about inflation here?
Sure. Well, inflation is for many sort of the hidden enemy. They know it's there, but they're dealing with it every day, especially now with a drastic reduction in purchasing power. More so over the long term, should this continue, and it always does find a way to continue, it really does have a way of eating away at clients' income, their lifestyle, and ultimately their legacy and what they can leave behind. So it's a real concern for people. It's not all the time accounted for in the financial plans that people set up, or at least not adequately. A lot of advisors are still relying on that old 3% estimate. But the reality is, depending where you live, in our current state, that's not nearly enough being factored in. So we try our best when we meet with clients to make sure that we're looking at all of the realities we've just discussed here on this segment. But inflation, of course, is very important.
Yeah, so many times you set that plan many years ago and you think this is going to get me through retirement.
Right.
And you're not going back and kind of revisiting it. That's important too.
Well, there's also a misconception. You know, people take this ideology that as we get older, we're not going to need to spend as much money. And there is some truth to that. You know, if you travel a lot, maybe as you get older, you can't travel the same. You can't participate in the same types of activities. But you'll find that those monies that you spent on one thing may transition to a different thing at this age. One of the reasons I brought up my parents in the last segment, where I was saying how my mother would call every day to say, can we afford it? Is because when you start planning, when you're younger, in your 40s or 50s, we still don't have that fear that hits all of us as you get into your 70s, 80s, and 90s. And again, it's uncanny, regardless of what level of wealth you're at. When you get to those ages, there is a constant fear of your money running out. So if you said to me, we do not spend any extra money, well, inflation is causing you to spend extra money. So people really need to keep that in sight, and that's why we really focus on this long-term care element.
And you really brought it up. I was getting ready to ask that exact question. A lot of times there's this big mistake that a lot of people will make as they get to retirement. What you just said, I'm not going to be spending as much money, but it's such a reality. Is it hard to kind of get people into that frame of thinking, yes, you will, in those conversations?
If they're younger, it's very difficult. I will tell you, I'm now 58, going to be 59, and I was having a conversation with my wife just the other day about certain fears that have entered into my mind that I didn't feel 5 years ago or 10 years ago, almost as if time's running out. Now, if I'm one of these people that say I'm going to be living to 100 or 110, let's just say, great, I still have another 40 years, right?
You're good.
But all of a sudden, I start thinking about things that I don't have the same amount of time I did 10 or 20 years ago. So when we're talking with someone that's older, certainly in their 60s or 70s, they recognize these things. They want to protect themselves. But the same statement always comes up, which is, we waited too long. Why didn't we plan this earlier? And the answer is because you weren't ready. You didn't have the concerns, the fears. When you're in your 30s or 40s, are you really thinking about how sick you're going to be down the road? You can't even picture being 60 or 70 or 80 years old. So yes, it is difficult, but if we can get through to somebody, they'll do the proper planning. And listen, if it doesn't hit you until you're 60 or 70, we do the best that we can to put you in the best position that you possibly can be in.
And Tony, I know as both of you are meeting with clients and they're assuming that they'll spend less, what does that conversation look like as you sit down with them and you kind of, it's almost like reeling them back a little bit and say, let me just tell, it's talking about realities on this show today, right?
Yeah, for sure. And while, aging is new to them, they've seen it with their parents, but not from the same perspective because they never had to manage their parents' budget. They now have to manage theirs. And our goal is not so much to get them to reduce all their expenses as it is to help them plan in advance to provide adequate income so they can sustain the lifestyle that they're used to and that they're comfortable with, while at the same time protecting their legacy. Because one of the concerns with this living too long thing is that they're going to erode monies that they had planned on leaving their children. If they're not worried about running out of money, they're worried about not leaving their children and grandchildren the legacy they had hoped for. So the planning we do with life insurance and annuity planning is central to that whole process.
And also, when people really realize it, the light bulb goes off. And I guess it's because of our age. I'm in my late 50s, you're in your early 60s. When we speak to contemporaries, everybody, and I'm sure everybody watching today who is of this age, have dealt with their parents going through it. And they realize the expense, whether it's living too long, whether it's inflation, whether it's my parents didn't stop spending, whether it's they got sick unexpectedly. And that's when they get nervous. And all of a sudden, hey, it's time we got to look at ourselves because we've been shelling out money for our parents, or everything my parents had just went by the wayside because of these huge expenses.
And that is why you're laying up at night, like you said, and worrying about things you never thought you'd worry about 20, 30 years ago. I'm right there with you. All right, great information from both of you. Straight ahead, Howard explains how life expectancy insurance can be the solution to your life insurance and estate planning cost concerns. That's next in Dollars and Cents. And still to come, Howard and Tony answer some of your questions. Stay with us.
How much do you have saved for retirement? Now, cut that number in half. That's the impact inflation could have. Think about what that could do to your lifestyle and spending power in retirement. Inflation is on the rise. How can you protect your retirement dreams? Start by getting this free guide to understand inflation and the 5 easy steps you can take to help keep it from downgrading your retirement. You can't stop inflation, but if you act now, you may be able to minimize its impact on your retirement. Get your free copy now.
In today's Dollars and Cents, Howard explains how life expectancy insurance can be the solution for you. Howard?
Thank you, Amy. So we're talking about life expectancy insurance, but before we do, let me just give you a little history on life insurance and what most of you are probably familiar with. We were all raised learning or hearing about whole life insurance, and this was a very structured type of policy, meaning you paid a premium and your death benefit was always there. And maturity, as I said in an earlier segment, was at age 100. However, there was no flexibility with that type of policy. So the idea of a life expectancy policy, that didn't mean anything. Now, I know I haven't explained what it is, so you don't know what I'm referring to yet, but leave it suffice to say that the whole life policy guaranteed you your premium, your death benefit, and your cash values, and that was it. Come into the early 1980s, it was the advent of universal life insurance, and these were flexible insurance policies. What did that mean exactly? What it meant was you were able to dial into your own premium setting along with your death benefit, and based on what you paid, the policy would last as long or as short as the amount of premium that you would be covering as far as mortality charges and other things such as that. Well, people started structuring universal life policies to last forever. What does that mean? To age 100, and then as people are living longer, age 120. So let me give you an example. Recently I was discussing with a 44-year-old in excellent health, a gentleman who was looking to buy $5 million of life insurance. And the premium was $34,500 a year in order for this policy to last through his age of 121. Now, I brought up the idea of reducing that premium. And he says, well, how would we do that? Well, it means that we're going to reduce duration. What does that mean? Instead of paying $34,500 a year, he could pay $30,000, actually $29,500 a year, and the policy would last through his age till 95. Now, what does that mean? That means that you must pass away prior to the age of 95. But you say, what happens if someone makes it to 95 and they're still alive? Can they continue the policy? The answer is yes. You see, you're buying a life insurance contract that has a maturity date of 121 years or 125 years of age. But I'm only paying enough money for it to last till 95. So think of it as you're driving your car and you start in South Florida and you're going to drive to Tallahassee. We know that your gas is going to run out at a certain point along the way. Does that mean you throw away the car? No. It means you refuel. You put more gas in and the car will continue. No different than with a life insurance policy. If I structure the policy to age 95 and you make it to that point, what do I have to do? I have to pay more premium. Now, is it going to be that $29,500 a year? No. It might be upwards of $50,000 or $60,000 a year. But it will not be a surprise because going into the conversation, you will know exactly what it's going to cost down the road. Next, can I reduce the duration even more? Absolutely. If he wanted to structure this policy to last through his age of 90, the annual premium drops from $29,500 a year to $25,000 a year. Now again, if he passes away prior to age 90, no issues, $5 million tax-free as a death benefit is paid out to his heirs. But if he is, God willing, still alive at age 90, he may start having to pay $40,000 or $50,000 a year at that point to continue. But like I said, we will know what those numbers are. Now that's showing you on a younger person in their early 40s what it costs to buy $5 million of insurance based on age 90, 95, or forever. Now let's move up for more of an estate planning idea when I'm dealing with what we call a survivorship policy or a last to die policy. And this is where a couple, let's say age 70, might be looking to buy, let's use that same $5 million insurance policy. Well, if they were to make a one payment, as many people do, it may be costing them somewhere around $1.3 to $1.5 million. But if they said, we are comfortable with a policy lasting through age 95, it may only cost them $1.1 million. And if they say, we're good with age 90, then maybe we're down at $800,000 to $900,000. Again, a way to save money. Now, is there a concern that the premiums are going to be too expensive if we outlive the initial duration? Absolutely. And for that reason, we don't buy those companies that are going to have an extraordinarily high premium. So it's, again, all in the research, in the due diligence, knowing exactly what you're buying, looking at all of these different insurance companies, seeing exactly what it is they offer. Now, one other thing that we've put you in the position for, and that is if you find that you no longer need that coverage when you reach those ages, or even if it's a few years before, the life settlement marketplace, which many of you are familiar with, have heard about, is another way of exiting an insurance policy. Since many of these policies have very low cash values, because again, remember, the goal was buying the most amount of insurance for the least amount of money, there is an exit strategy where there are hedge funds that are actually interested in buying these insurance policies because they know once you've attained that age, you have a shortened life expectancy. So they can determine what the value of that policy is, and it may be a terrific way for you to get out. In any event, that is exactly how life expectancy insurance works, and I hope it works for you.
Still to come, we'll hear directly from you in our Q&A section. We'll be right back.
Our generation has always believed a hard day's work is its own reward. So for some of us, it's hard to turn off that work switch come retirement. But imagine what can happen when that work switch becomes a life switch. Then you realize every day in retirement is its own reward. We can help you flip the switch to make work days become life days.
And now it's time to get to some of the questions you have for Howard and Tony. Are you guys ready for this?
Absolutely.
All right, here's our first question. This one's from Ron in West Palm. He asks, are you saying that I can substantially lower the cost of my life insurance and estate planning costs by structuring my life insurance to last only to my life expectancy rather than my age, or rather than the age 120 or 125, which most companies use? 120, really? That far out?
Well, it's things have come a long way. When I started in this business back in the early 1980s, gosh, it's incredible to think I've been doing this over 40 years. Life insurance policies had a maturity date of age 100. And very simply because back then people weren't living to be 100. The number of centurions were very few and far between. As people started living beyond it, and the insurance companies needed to extend that maturity date so people still had coverage if they lived beyond age 100. Well, as that took place, we'd always come up with creative ways of presenting life insurance, and our goal was always to buy the most amount of coverage for the least amount of money. We weren't, because we were doing so much for estate planning purposes, cash values weren't the main goal. It was death benefit and is a reduced premium. Well, when I started analyzing how the insurance companies were charging, basically, to make a policy last forever, they were amortizing all the mortality costs and all the charges over your lifetime. So you had a level premium. But if you were to pay a much smaller premium up front and let it escalate, obviously, when you get to your 80s, 90s, and 100s, the mortality charges, the actual cost of insurance skyrockets. But nevertheless, it gave people the opportunity to dictate exactly how their policy works. I'll never forget, there was a woman I was dealing with years ago. She was 75 years old, and I'm telling her what it's going to cost for the policy to last forever. And she says, forever? I'm not living forever. I'm not making it past age 90. How much is it going to cost me for this policy to be worthless at age 90? Well, she saved about 60% in her annual premiums. Now, I don't know how she knew this. She actually died at 89. Wow. She knew what she was talking about. But nevertheless,
never question a woman, Howard.
This is where life expectancy insurance came from. So the idea is to structure a policy through an age that you're comfortable with, knowing exactly what it's going to cost to continue, assuming you live beyond that age. And if it fits within your parameters, it's an incredible strategy for people to buy as much insurance as they possibly can by having the lowest possible premiums.
Okay, here we go with another question from Maggie in Palm Beach. I have my retirement savings in several different sources, but what I don't have is a firm understanding of when I should tap into those different accounts once I retire. What's your best advice?
Well, I think there's a lot of information to be answered here, especially when it comes to the annuities, which Tony has been focused on for over 40 years. Tony, why don't you take this one and show her how we would really help her out in this case?
Well, in the case of that client's question, there are a number of considerations. Oftentimes, clients amass wealth in different types of accounts. So they might have some savings in the bank. They might have some pension plans through work. They might have some qualified IRAs or 401ks stashed away that they need to draw on. So at a certain point in time, they have to make decisions about when they're going to be taking that money, and it's important that somebody's guiding them as to where the efficiencies lie, because obviously you don't necessarily want to take qualified money out first unless you're required to due to an RMD situation, required minimum distribution, because that's generally fully taxable unless it's a Roth IRA. They may be better off in some cases taking money from savings where they're only going to pay tax, for example, on some of the interest that they've earned or have already paid taxes along the way. So there are efficiencies built into, for lack of a better term, the order of operations. We don't necessarily just let them randomly take monies from any account they just randomly choose. They need guidance. So they'll do that with their tax advisor. And while we're not tax advisors, because we're so comfortable in the financial world, we can give them some guidance and save them quite a bit of money as they distribute their income over and through their retirement.
Okay, they've got options and there's a whole strategy about it.
Correct.
Okay, great information. Here's another one from Chuck in Delray Beach. I'm retiring in the next 6 months. I've worked a long time, nearly 40 years. I'm looking forward to retirement, but one of my biggest concerns is taxes. I know my annuities have all grown for years on a tax-deferred basis, but is it true that with annuities, I have no control over what my tax bill will be once I retire?
Well, that's not necessarily true. You do know exactly what the tax bill is going to be. If they are just regular traditional annuities, we know the income that you're generating is going to be taxable. But it's interesting, and maybe it's just philosophy, the way I was raised, how I was taught about taxes. There's nothing you can do if something is taxable from the standpoint of, I got to pay tax. And I see this with people who've owned stock for a long time. And they'll say, I can't sell the stock because the capital gains tax is going to be huge. But they don't give any credence to the fact that if they don't sell that stock, what happens if the stock value comes down? Why is that not a tax, so to speak, but paying the government is? In the annuities, if I need income and I've structured these annuities for the purpose of giving me income, we know when we went into them that there was going to be a taxable event down the road. Now, there are many different types of annuities that can be structured where it's very minimal taxation. So in something that we did not plan with this particular person, we would have to review his information and show him the best ways of distributing that annuity money. For people that we do have the opportunity to sit with, we will put them in a position of paying as little tax as possible upon those distributions.
Great insight, gentlemen. Thank you so much. I appreciate your answers. And if you have a question, you can call the number on your screen or visit the website at any time. When it comes to your money and your retirement, it's important that you've considered all the options, including life insurance, annuities, and life settlements in your retirement planning. You've heard a lot of great information today, so why wait? Take what you learned today to help you live rich in the years to come. For Howard Kaye and Tony Scuderi and the team at Howard Kaye Insurance Agency, I'm Amy Sharp, and we look forward to seeing you next time.